Happy Thanksgiving to all of our viewers in the USA who are celebrating and those outside of the USA as well. We're going to be thankful and start off that we had some wonderful football to talk about in the Champions League, but it wasn't wonderful for one specific club, and that is Liverpool, as they were humbled by PSV at home. Well, now a lot of people have been questioning how long can this rot last and how long can Arne Slot last at the rate he's going. Well, this is what he had to say about his position at the club.
Yeah, we've had the same conversations as we've had since I'm here. And as I'm not sure if I said it last night, but we fight on and we try to improve. That's what we all try. But the conversations have been the same as they've been for the past 1.5 years.
All right, well, we're thankful to be joined by the rest of our crew today. A bit of a full house here. Frank Leboeuf, Darke, and Beth Lindop are joining us. Beth, you know I'm going to have to start with you because you were at that Arne Slot press conference today where, of course, he was defending himself there. He said, look, they're just going to fight on. It's business as usual. But in a week where PSV are humbling you at home in the Champions League, is it really business as usual? What is the club and the mood like saying about his position?
Yeah, well, I think the words to describe the mood at the club at the moment is just shell-shocked. You know, everybody that you speak to, from the manager through to the players, to the supporters, everybody can't quite conceive that this is actually happening. You know, it's only 6 months ago that Liverpool were lifting the Premier League trophy, and they obviously go on a huge summer spending spree, which many people thought would mark them out as favourites both in the Premier League and in Europe as well. So for them to now have lost 9 of the last 12 games and to be in a position where Arne Slot's authority and his future at the club is genuinely being questioned is just almost inexplicable, really. And everyone is shocked. I think Arne Slot used the word confused before the PSV game. He was confused that Liverpool had managed to go on such a poor run when they had so much quality, which when you look into your head coach Francis maybe is a little bit concerning if even he doesn't know the solution. But what I will say is, as you say, I was there today. I've been there at most of his press conferences over the past few weeks, and his mood and his tone hasn't really changed. You know, he's not really seemed too downbeat. He seemed to sort of maintain that air of sort of quiet calm, which was so integral to Liverpool's success last season. But ultimately, you know, no matter how much credit you've got in the bank, positions can become untenable. And I think another few defeats and Arne Slot could be at that point at Liverpool.
Ooh, another few defeats and Arne Slot could be out. But we know our Frank Leboeuf has a flair for the dramatic. Frank, and you think he should be out now?
Well, it seems to be something huge going on there, and I think something is broken, and it's hard to find a way to resolve the problem unless you get rid of the one person you can get rid of, because you can't get rid of the 25 players. So you have to if you have to take a decision, you will go for the coach. But I don't forget the last season, and Beth was mentioning it, 6 months ago, Liverpool, with the same coach, became champion of England. So there is a reason, and it's not only because of him that Liverpool is in that situation. I mean, all the players are really only the shadow of themselves. So how do you resolve, how can you resolve the problem? I don't know, because that seems to be huge. The only way to have a reaction is maybe getting rid of the coach and try to have another atmosphere, another energy from somebody else. Because those players, they have qualities. What's wrong with them? Really, what's wrong with them? They became champion with the same coach. Why they are only the shadow of themselves? I don't have the answer. I think nobody has the answer. I don't even think that the players have the answer. But that's becoming very dramatic.
Darke, well, Frank thinks that, you know, they need some new energy now, probably from a different manager. Beth says that it could probably be a few more defeats that they will have to suffer before Arne Slot is out. How long do you think he has?
Well, things will get a bit awkward, I think. I mean, the time isn't now, quite clearly. Champions 6-7 months ago. But their next 3 games are West Ham away, which is a harder game than it was a month ago, because West Ham are picking up points now. They've got Sunderland and they've got Leeds United. All games in the normal course of events, you'd think Liverpool would win. But this is not the normal course of events. I think the players look visibly shaken. I think they look haunted. And I think, just as Frank was saying there, I think why they're haunted and they're shaken is they can't work it out themselves. They don't know what's wrong. And that is alarming, I think, for Arne Slot.
All right, well, Curtis Jones had a fiery message for the players at his boyhood club, and this is what he had to say. He said, look, it starts with just wanting to be a man out there and just wanting to tackle someone and just be a dog out there, like go and smash someone. There's times when we do play, but off the ball stuff, I think that's the stuff that has to change. Stewart, is that it? Just a little attitude readjustment, be a bit more of a dog in this fight?
When things are going badly, the one thing you can change is your work rate and your work ethic, and you've got to try and get the crowd back on side. Sometimes that is making 1 or 2 tackles. But you've also got to be clear with what you're trying to do. It's no good just racing around trying to tackle people, and you get played around even worse. So that comes down to the coach, to making sure the defensive situation is completely stable. The players have got to make the right decisions on the field because they're making bad decisions on the field. We heard that Van Dijk is a world-class player. We have done for many years. At the moment, he's making schoolboy errors in terms of his positional play and his recovery runs. He looks as though his confidence is completely lost and he can't make a decision. So just running around kicking people or making tackles, yes, it might inspire the crowd a bit more and get everyone going, but it's not quite the way to do it.
What did you make of what Curtis Jones had to say, Craig? Would that fix it?
I didn't pay any attention to it, to be honest. There's a tipping point for every manager, and I don't think we're there yet.
No,
but there is a tipping point. But as I said in yesterday's show or whatever show it was, I haven't got a clue, can't remember. Some clubs are very reactionary and make hasty decisions. Whilst Liverpool are not perfect, and no club is, history will tell you they don't tend to react on a whim. They don't tend to just hire and fire willy-nilly. Like a Real Madrid and Abramovich's Chelsea and others, it was get them out, pay off the manager, give him his lump sum and bring somebody else in and then make a change. Historically, they haven't really, it might have been the odd occasion, but they haven't really been like that. What's happening here? There is a tipping point at some point, and I just can't answer that question to when that is. But clearly, if he doesn't turn it around quickly, going into Christmas and the New Year and it gets busy, and I think there's less games in Boxing Day this year. There might only be 1 game, actually. But it's a very busy period. Then there is going to be that tipping point for Arne Slot. But I just don't know when that is. And interesting enough, and I was going to ask Beth, actually, what's the... I know the Liverpool fans are not going to be shouting for Arne Slot out or anything like that, but what's the general feeling amongst the hardcore fans that are at the game in terms of how he needs to approach this and the reaction, if any, to the manager or the players when they're having these bad results?
Yeah, well, I think Liverpool fans pride themselves on the fact that they are supportive of their players. They very rarely turn on their own players. That's why it was such big news last year when Trent Alexander-Arnold was booed when it came out that he was going to Real Madrid. So they have been, for the most part, quite supportive, but everybody has a tipping point. It's the same for the manager, but in terms of fans as well, everybody gets to a point where they feel like they can't possibly keep up with what's happening. And I think 2 home defeats. I think it's the first time since 1953 that Liverpool have lost 3 games consecutively by 3 or more goals. And in that season, they were relegated. So, that just tells you how far they've fallen from last year. And they were at the full-time whistle last night, a few boos. It was still very much in the minority, but when the match-going fans start to turn on the team and the manager, then that's when things can start going badly wrong. I think, most fans have a lot of affection for Slot and feel like he deserves time because of what he did last season, because of how well he navigated a very difficult summer with a team grieving the loss of a teammate and a friend. So I think all of those factors mean that Liverpool fans want him to succeed. But ultimately, if you're getting beat every week, then there comes a point when you have to just stop the rot. I think the issue for Liverpool is, it's all well and good saying, get rid of him, bring someone else in, but then who do you bring in? Because you look at the managerial market at the moment, and there aren't many standout candidates. And, some of the names that have been touted, the likes of Andone Iraola at Bournemouth, Oliver Glasner at Crystal Palace, those types of managers, they haven't been tested at this level. It's a very different task delivering at Bournemouth than it is to delivering at Liverpool. So it would be a big risk to bring anybody in at this moment in time. And I think that's why for a lot of match-going fans, they would still quite like Slot to be able to turn this around. But at the moment, the signs of him being able to do that are pretty scarce.
Frank, of course, a name that Robbo mentioned is Virgil van Dijk, and it's rare in the last couple of seasons that we ever had to question what on earth he was doing in situations, but he had a moment, especially in the game yesterday.
I don't get it. And again, as I said before, we don't know what's going on. I think they all should go to see a shrink because they have a problem. It's in their heads, because you don't lose your capabilities and tools like that. It's impossible. Konate is not the Konate that we have known, and of course Virgil van Dijk. I don't recognize him. He will have never done a mistake like that on the penalty, but also on some of the things that I see that he's not confident. He lost all the confidence that he had in his football, and it's for me, I don't understand that. I don't understand why it's possible like a player like that can become, because I play in this position. Yeah, you can have doubts. Yeah, maybe you think twice. But you don't go that far. That's really extreme for me. And I don't understand. It happens to all the players. It's like a curse, you know, and I don't get it, because you cannot, well, we saw that with Manchester City last season. You know, became the champion of England and became a shamble 6 months after. Same thing for Liverpool. Champion, shamble. I don't want a next champion, you know, because they're going to be scared the season after.
Van Dijk, Alisson and Salah have to lead this team as the senior players in the dressing room out of this mess. They're the ones, and they've all played poorly. Not really the goalkeeper, but certainly Van Dijk and Salah. Those are the two players, and three if you add the experienced goalkeeper, that have to lead the dressing room now and be the ones putting their hand up for the manager and saying, listen, we will turn this around. We will make sure the dressing room and the squad and the players are back on track, and they have to start leading, and they have to lead by example, and they haven't done that.
Quite often, when a team's winning, you say, what a great leader Van Dijk is.
Yeah.
Now's the test of whether he's a good leader when things are going wrong. They used to say it about John Terry, and I'd always argue, what happened when John Terry at Chelsea was the captain and his great leadership when managers were getting the sack and they weren't doing particularly well? Now, Van Dijk has got to step up. We all said he's a great leader when they won the title last year and did well the year before that. Now he's got to stand up. He's got to stop making mistakes himself. He's got to play with more confidence, and he's got to get everybody around him playing with more confidence as well. And he's got to back the manager, because we don't know what's going on off the field, on the training field. Frank said it earlier, I think, and Darke said it earlier. Mm-hmm. You don't know. You can see what's going on the field, but is it a combination of what's going on the training field and what's happening in the dressing room?
Say something, Alexis. Yeah.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he seems to be in the press and for quite a while now that Konate is a target to get out of the team and being the weakness and the weakest link. And I don't get it, because we talked about and Craig was saying that the leaders, they are Van Dijk, they are Mo Salah. Where are they? Where are they to cover those players, to protect those players in the game? You know, yes, Konate can make a mistake, but and Stewart was mentioning John Terry. When the other players they had problems, John Terry was there. He was there helping them. You know, I play with Marcel Desailly. I can tell you, the guy was a leader. And Marcel Desailly, you had a problem, he was there to supply you. That's something I don't get it. It's very strange. Yeah, Konate is not good for sure, but he cannot be the only target. I mean, if I see every players, they have been struggling. Gravenberg, McAllister, the same thing. I don't even talk about Isaac. I don't know if because of the World Cup next summer, those players are maybe shaking because they're afraid that they cannot be with the national team. Because if Konate continues like that, he won't be with the national team. But again, he cannot be the only one being targeting as the weakest link, because they're all bad.
Yeah, Konate's made one or two mistakes, and they're glaring mistakes. They're miscontrolled, or he runs over the ball, whatever it is. But I'm looking at Van Dijk, because the mistakes I don't excuse are the ones where you take up bad positions, you get run past and don't recover, and then you blame somebody else for it. Mm-hmm. And at the moment, Van Dijk is doing that to Konate too many times.
Throwing him under the bus.
Throwing him under the bus. He keeps waving his arm as if Konate should be coming across to cover him. But he's not running back quickly enough. His recovery runs are slow, and he's not understanding the game at the moment.
Thank you.
It would be interesting, actually, just before I get to Darke, but Beth, just speaking on hearing what Robbo has to say about Virgil van Dijk, how many questions are there surrounding him? Of course, at this point, he is a Liverpool legend, but as Robbo is saying, not really being the leader they need, especially when you keep throwing your teammate under the bus when they're making mistakes.
Yeah, I think there is frustration, absolutely, and I think Virgil will be probably the first person to hold his hand up and say that he's not been playing well enough this season. And I think to Virgil's credit, a number of the players haven't been wanting to speak to the media over the past few weeks, and Virgil has, with the exception of yesterday, actually every single week has come out and has spoken to us, and has been honest, has been frank. And I think that is what you want from a captain and from a leader. And I do agree. I think you want him to be a leader on the pitch. There are maybe occasions where he's maybe looked to his teammates, the likes of Konate, the likes of Milos Kerkez, who struggled a little at their door. But I think on the whole, he has more credit in the bank than everyone else. And, I agree, Konate should not be the only person singled out for these poor performances. But at the end of the day, he's not a young player anymore, Konate. He captained France not too long ago. He's got ambitions of captaining them potentially at a World Cup. Van Dijk won't be at Liverpool forever. And so if Konate is to stay at Liverpool, is to become the next leader of Liverpool's back line, you do want to see a little bit more from him. And I think that's where the frustration comes from Liverpool fans towards Konate as opposed to Van Dijk.
Well, Darke, we know that Liverpool definitely splashed some cash and brought in some big name reinforcements over in the summer. Now with the January transfer window coming up, a lot of fans, of course, demanding that they bring in defensive reinforcements. Do you think Arne Slot should be given the time to reinforce in January?
Well, yeah, I think he should. But, look at the £450 million that they spent. The only signing that has so far come off is Hugo Ekitike, who scored a few goals and looked pretty good. Isak's never been fit since his strike at Newcastle. Wirtz hasn't adapted yet to playing in England. Kerkez has looked a liability at left back. Frimpong's been unfit most of the time. So that's a problem. I mean, a question I'd throw out to everybody here on the panel tonight is, did they change a little too much? I know title-winning teams have to refresh, but were there too many changes?
No, because Alexander-Arnold was leaving and Andy Robertson can't do it anymore on a weekly basis. So those two positions had to change.
Robertson's back in the team, Craig.
Andy Robertson is not a long-term solution anymore for Liverpool. That's why they went and bought Kerkez. If you watched him play for Scotland and watched him play for Liverpool, he's come in and been able to do a job. Think back to the game at Chelsea. I think when he came in, he either played or he came on. He struggled. He struggled for the national team. Okay, they had a big result against Denmark, but the game prior to that, he was getting pelters. They wanted him out of the team. So those positions, they had to make changes for the future. There is no doubt about that. You could argue the signing of Florian Wirtz with the midfield of McAllister, Szoboszlai and Gravenberch. You could argue about that scenario. You might also argue about getting somebody to back up Mo Salah on that side, which they haven't got because they've lost Luiz to Bayern Munich. But, I mean, I think if we sit here and talk about, Liverpool, to your words, reinforcing in January, I think people would just laugh, wouldn't they?
We all said they were good signings. When they made all those signings at the beginning of the season,
give them the title
not
already.
one person I don't think would have said, dear, they're terrible signings. No. Everyone, Don Hutchin was always on about Kerkez being the best left-back in the Premier League. We saw a lot of Frimpong in the Bundesliga dominating down the right-hand side. Ekitike last season, he was excellent. And Florian Wirtz was the best player in the Bundesliga. So these are the players that we thought would make Liverpool a better side. Has he been able to integrate them well? Probably not. And that's been Arne Slot's problem. He hasn't been able to integrate the players into the system that they were playing.
Well, Frank, yesterday on the show we discussed, when Liverpool did reinforce in the summer and there's a lot of new faces, and Robbo brought up the fact that those reinforcements probably rubbed the older players or the more experienced players, the Premier League title-winning players, the wrong way, that they felt some type of way potentially being replaced by these new kids on the block. Do you think there's any of that?
That's possible. Don't forget also the death of Diogo Jota. That can be also an aspect of the players. Being in the dressing room and not feeling well every time they see the seat. So that can affect also the players. I don't know why and how we can find the solution to resolve the problem, because we don't know where the problem is. And I don't think the players have been bitter or jealous because of the arrival of other players. And as Stewart explained, that was only fair. The players who came, they were there because they were needed. And they were needed, and they had to reinforce in those specific positioning because they wanted to keep on winning. So that was only normal, and should have given more competition between the players. But like Frimpong is not fit enough, Kerkez is not good enough, is not doing great. They need to adapt. But I think. Again, the players have to stop trying to find excuses elsewhere, because they all have to look at themselves in the mirror, because they all have been bad. And it's not because of the arrival of the others, or it's not because they can adapt to anything, it's because they can't play together, because something is not working. As Stewart said, Arne Slot is guilty for that, because he has to make sure that the chemistry works. But he's not the only one, and they have to stop trying to find where the problem is. Where the problem is, maybe just do what the coach wants.
Well, look, we've just done 25 minutes on Liverpool here. Let's stop dragging the backside out of Liverpool. If they don't start winning games, he's out. It's quite simple.